On March 21, 1976, an ambulance sped away from the Aspen, Colorado, home of Olympic skier Spider Sabich. Sabich had been shot with a Luger pistol and died on the way to the hospital from blood loss. The only person who was with him inside the house at the time was Claudine Longet, a singer and actress who had once been known to millions of American viewers through primetime television programs. Within just a few hours, the name Claudine Longet appeared on the front pages of newspapers across the United States, marking the beginning of one of the most controversial cases in Hollywood history. But many years before she entered a courtroom, Claudine had embodied a very different kind of Hollywood dream. From a young woman who left Paris for Las Vegas to become a dancer with the Folies Bergère, she met Andy Williams, entered the American entertainment industry, and quickly became a familiar face on television. After Herb Alpert signed her to A&M Records, Claudine released the gold album Claudine, had several songs appear on the Billboard charts, and appeared alongside Peter Sellers in the classic comedy The Party. With her gentle voice and elegant French style, she was once regarded as one of the distinctive figures of the easy-listening music scene of the late 1960s. Yet a single gunshot completely changed the way the public remembered Claudine Longet. Her achievements in music and film were gradually overshadowed by the trial, debates that never truly came to an end, and decades of living almost entirely removed from the spotlight. Claudine's life is not only the story of an artist who once stood very close to the heights of Hollywood, but also the journey of a person for whom a single event was enough to define almost her entire legacy in the public memory. Claudine Georgette Longet was born on January 29, 1942, in Paris, at a time when France was still under German occupation during World War II. Her mother was a doctor, while her father worked in the manufacture of X-ray equipment. Unlike many other famous figures in Hollywood, very little about Claudine's early years was recorded in later accounts, and she herself did not leave behind many public recollections of her childhood. As a result, it is difficult to determine precisely what her family environment was like, or what experiences influenced her during those early years. What can be established more clearly is that Claudine showed an ability to sing and dance from a young age, and performing became the first doorway that led her into the world of entertainment. As she entered her teenage years, Claudine began working as a show dancer and appeared on French television. Little documentation survives of her earliest performances, but one of those appearances would send her life in an entirely different direction. In 1960, Lew Walters, the American entertainment impresario and father of Barbara Walters, saw Claudine performing on French television. Walters was then associated with the Folies Bergère show at the Tropicana Hotel in Las Vegas and was searching for new faces for the troupe. He subsequently invited her to come to the United States to perform, placing Claudine, then only about 18 years old, before the decision to leave Paris and begin an entirely new life. In 1960, Claudine accepted the offer and came to Las Vegas, where she joined the Folies Bergère troupe at the Tropicana Hotel. From performances that had attracted little attention in France, she stepped onto one of the major stages of the Las Vegas Strip as a young dancer with no established name in America. Her work at the Tropicana became the starting point for Claudine's years in the American entertainment industry, while also placing her in an environment that regularly brought together performers and major figures from the entertainment world. It was during this period that an encounter away from the stage would once again send her life in a new direction. Claudine met Andy Williams in Las Vegas while he was performing in the city. By then, Williams had already established his name in music and was entering a period of rapid career growth on television. The two began a romantic relationship and married in December 1961. As Claudine searched for a path beyond the Folies Bergère stage, she also appeared on programs associated with Andy and gradually gained opportunities to perform in front of television cameras. Andy became an important figure during the early years in which Claudine was building her life and career in America, but her acting career subsequently took shape through a series of small roles and appearances of her own on screen, rather than all of those opportunities being attributable to direct introductions from her husband. In 1963, Claudine began appearing on television with roles in the sitcom McHale's Navy. A year later, she also appeared in the film version of McHale's Navy, followed by appearances in series such as Combat, 12 O'Clock High, and Mr. Novak. These were still largely guest roles, not enough to make her a leading actress on American television. Claudine's appearance and distinctive French accent made her easily recognizable among the faces appearing on screen, but at the same time, they also led many of the characters she played to be associated with the image of a young, charming European woman. Those roles helped her maintain a presence on television, but they had yet to produce a character significant enough to change her position in Hollywood. Another place that brought Claudine closer to American audiences was The Andy Williams Show. She appeared on the program many times alongside her husband, singing, performing, and gradually becoming a familiar face to viewers. Her dark hair, French accent, and gentle manner gave Claudine an easily recognizable image on television. But her close association with a major star like Andy Williams also created a paradox. The more the public came to know Claudine through her husband's program, the more difficult it became for her to be seen entirely apart from his name. During those early years, the press often mentioned Claudine in connection with Andy Williams, even after she had begun taking on television work of her own. This does not mean that her career existed solely because of her husband, but it does show Claudine's position by the mid-1960s. She had acting roles and a steady public presence, yet she still had not achieved anything significant enough to define herself as an independent artist. Film had not provided that breakthrough, nor had her guest appearances on television. In the end, the opportunity that changed Claudine's position came from a field that she had not previously developed as her primary career path. The year 1966 marked the biggest turning point since Claudine Longet arrived in America. In the final episode of the first season of the series Run for Your Life, she played a young woman and, for the first time, had the opportunity to demonstrate her singing ability on television when she performed Antonio Carlos Jobim's bossa nova song, Meditation, in both English and French. It was only a guest role like many of her previous appearances, but the performance produced an effect far beyond expectations. At a time when many singers pursued powerful, technically demanding styles of performance, Claudine's thin, soft voice and almost whisper-like way of singing became what set her apart. Just a few brief minutes on television opened an entirely new path for her, one that extended beyond acting. Among the viewers watching the program that evening was Herb Alpert, a trumpeter and co-founder of A&M Records. He was particularly impressed by Claudine's performance style and, not long afterward, when he met her at a club in New Orleans, personally offered her a recording contract. The decision surprised quite a few people, because Claudine had never been known as a professional singer. Herb Alpert believed that Claudine's distinctive French vocal tone, subtle approach to interpreting songs, and elegant image could give her a unique place in the American pop music market. Rather than competing through vocal power, A&M chose to develop Claudine as an artist who could win over listeners through her artistic personality. The first single Claudine released for A&M was Meditation, the very song that had brought her to the attention of the record label. Following that initial success, A&M continued to allow Claudine to pursue this direction, with several compositions by Antonio Carlos Jobim, including A Felicidad, How Insensitive, Insensatez, and Dindi. During a period when many artists were moving toward more powerful vocal performances, Claudine remained committed to a style that was soft, intimate, and almost like whispering directly to the listener. In August 1967, A&M released her debut album, Claudine. Less than a year after entering the world of singing, she had already advanced far beyond the image of an actress simply trying her hand at music. The album climbed to number 11 on the Billboard Top LPs chart and reached number 9 on the Cashbox Top Pop Albums chart. Not long afterward, Claudine was certified gold by the Recording Industry Association of America, RIA, with sales exceeding 500,000 copies. That success not only surpassed many people's expectations, but also helped her move beyond the image of a familiar television face and become a recording artist in her own right. The success of her debut album also presented Claudine and A&M Records with a considerable challenge. Her second album, The Look of Love, therefore became a test of whether her previous success had merely been a temporary phenomenon or the beginning of a lasting career. Although it did not achieve the same level of success as her debut album, the record still reached the top 40 in the United States, peaking at number 33 on Billboard and number 23 on Cashbox. 2 consecutive albums reaching high chart positions showed that Claudine's success was not simply a matter of temporary luck. A&M continued to develop her image as one of the representative figures of gentle pop music, aimed at adult listeners who preferred sophisticated love songs to the rock music that was gradually coming to dominate the market. It was not only Claudine's albums that performed well. Many of her singles also consistently achieved positive results on the Billboard Adult Contemporary chart, where her musical style found its most suitable audience. Hello Hello climbed to number 8, becoming the most successful single of her career on that chart. Here, There, and Everywhere, her rendition of the Lennon and McCartney song, reached the Adult Contemporary Top 20. Small Talk went on to reach number 12, while Good Day Sunshine also entered the top 40. Although she was not a star who dominated the Billboard Hot 100, Claudine nevertheless established a steady position within easy listening, a genre that was highly popular with American audiences in the late 1960s. Her commercial success also brought mixed reactions from critics. Many articles praised Claudine's refined image, restrained performance style, and distinctive voice that was difficult to mistake for anyone else's. Producers also appreciated her ability to convey emotion in a gentle and intimate way. However, quite a few critics argued that Claudine's vocal technique was limited, that her range was not wide, and that her singing was too soft to compare with the leading singers of the era. Maintaining that style also meant accepting that she would not compete through the qualities that the market increasingly valued. Rather than trying to become a powerful vocalist, Claudine remained committed to her soft, almost whispering style of singing. What had once been regarded as a weakness ultimately became her signature, helping her create a distinctive identity in an increasingly competitive music market. By 1968, Claudine Longet had come closer than ever to becoming an A-list star in the American entertainment industry. Within the space of only a few months, she continuously released new music, appeared in a major Hollywood film, and was seen frequently on television. Following the success of her first 2 albums, A&M Records continued to place its confidence in Claudine with Love is Blue. The album quickly entered the Billboard Top 30, climbing to number 29 and further confirming that her earlier success had not been a temporary phenomenon. At a time when rock was exploding in popularity with the Beatles, The Doors, and Cream, Claudine remained committed to gentle love songs, bossa nova, and easy listening. She chose to follow her own path rather than chase the trend that was dominating the market. That momentum was quickly followed by Claudine returning to the recording studio almost immediately to make Colors, her 4th studio album in less than 2 years. Rather than completely repeating the formula that had brought her success, she deliberately broadened her musical palette with more varied arrangements and a selection of songs with a more subdued atmosphere. Although the album still received positive artistic assessments, its sales no longer maintained the momentum of her previous releases. The American music market was changing rapidly, as rock, psychedelic music, and songs reflecting the spirit of a new generation took over the charts. The gentle style of music Claudine pursued began gradually losing its advantage. Just as music was bringing her the greatest success of her career, Claudine opened a new door in film. Director Blake Edwards invited her to appear in The Party, a comedy starring Peter Sellers. Claudine was cast as Michelle Monet, a French singer who appears amid the series of chaotic situations unfolding at an extravagant party. The character did not have as much screen time as Peter Sellers, but each of her appearances provided a gentle pause amid the film's rapid-fire comedy. It was precisely Claudine's natural manner and restrained acting style that allowed her to leave an impression without the need for showy performances. The Party not only helped Claudine make her mark on the screen, but also gave her one of the most memorable songs of her career. Henry Mancini composed the music, and Don Black wrote the lyrics for Nothing to Lose, the love song Claudine performed in the film itself. Much like the style she pursued in her music, the song did not make its impression through powerful high notes, but instead won over listeners with its fragility and intimacy. Nothing to Lose quickly became more closely associated with Claudine Longet's name than any of her previous singles. Even decades later, whenever the party is mentioned, audiences still remember the image of Claudine singing amid the chaos of the party, like a gentle pause between one burst of laughter and the next. The success of the party also introduced Claudine to an audience far larger than television had been able to reach. Over time, the party came to be regarded as one of the classic comedies of Blake Edwards and Peter Sellers, while the role of Michelle Monet became the most remembered film role of Claudine's career. Alongside her artistic successes, 1968 also left Claudine with a memory of an entirely different kind. She and Andy Williams had a close relationship with Senator Robert F. Kennedy and his wife, Ethel Kennedy. On the evening of June 4, 1968, the couple had arranged to meet the Kennedy family after the Democratic primary election had concluded. While waiting at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, they heard unusual noises and soon learned that Robert Kennedy had just been shot. Claudine and Andy immediately went to Good Samaritan Hospital, where doctors made futile efforts to save the senator. After Kennedy died, Claudine attended the funeral and the train journey carrying his coffin from New York to Washington. The event left such a profound mark on Claudine and her family that she and Andy later decided to name their youngest son Robert in memory of their late friend. By the end of 1968, Claudine Longet had established a highly distinctive image in the American entertainment industry. The press often described her as an embodiment of French chic, an elegant French woman with understated beauty and refined taste. Hollywood also viewed her as the archetypal French ingenue, a young woman with an innocent, romantic, yet deeply captivating presence. In music, Claudine became one of the representative figures of easy listening in the late 1960s. Although she did not possess the most powerful voice or the most exceptional technique, she still managed to establish a place for herself through the very identity she had persistently pursued. It was the point at which Claudine came closest to the peak of fame in her career, as music, film, and television simultaneously opened up the greatest opportunities before her. As 1969 began, Claudine Longet maintained her working pace after 2 consecutive years of success. A&M Records released her 5th studio album, Run Wild, Run Free, continuing the gentle pop style blended with bossa nova that had become her signature. Singles such as Hurry On Down, Walk in the Park, and Long Long Time still found an audience on radio, but they no longer achieved the same reach as her earlier recordings. After the high point of 1968, the first signs began to emerge that Claudine's commercial appeal was slowing down. That change came at precisely the moment when the American music market was undergoing a dramatic transformation. Rock and sounds that reflected the spirit of a younger generation increasingly dominated, while easy listening gradually lost the position it had once held. Claudine did not follow the new trends, instead continuing with the soft, almost whispering style of singing that had created her identity. That choice allowed her to retain a distinct group of listeners, but it also caused the distance between Claudine's music and the mainstream market to grow increasingly wider. Another difficulty had followed Claudine since the early years of her career. Despite having achieved success of her own in music, film, and television, her name was still frequently placed alongside Andy Williams. The image of Andy Williams' wife continued to appear in the way the media introduced Claudine, making it more difficult for her to build a completely independent artistic identity. As her newer albums no longer achieved the same results as before, and no major new single emerged to create another breakthrough, her career entered a period of gradual decline rather than experiencing a sudden collapse. After Run Wild, Run Free, Claudine's relationship with A&M Records came to an end. She moved to Barnaby Records, the label founded by Andy Williams, and continued pursuing her familiar style through new recordings. We've Only Just Begun, a song made famous by the Carpenters, was interpreted by Claudine with her characteristic soft voice. With Let's Spend the Night Together, she transformed a rock song by the Rolling Stones into a gentle pop recording, showing that even as the market changed, Claudine did not abandon the singing style that had made her name. Barnaby later prepared another album for Claudine, and a number of songs were recorded, including Sugar Me. However, the project was never released as planned after the master recordings were lost. It was not until 1993, when some of the recordings were found and included on the compilation Sugar Me, that audiences were finally able to hear the music made during the final period of her recording career. A project that might once have opened the next chapter ultimately became an album that never appeared at the time it was created. As her studio work became less frequent, Claudine continued to maintain a presence on television. She appeared in Andy Williams' television specials and made guest appearances on shows hosted by Bobby Darin and Tom Jones. However, these appearances primarily helped her remain connected with audiences rather than creating a new stage of career development. Claudine was still a familiar face, but she was no longer in the position of an artist, continuously bringing new material to the market, as she had been just a few years earlier. Acting also failed to provide the breakthrough Claudine needed at this point. She appeared in the television film How to Steal an Airplane and In the Streets of San Francisco, but these were largely projects or roles that were not substantial enough to return her career to the trajectory it had followed in the late 1960s. Her most notable opportunity came in 1974 with The Little Prince, the musical film adapted from the work of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Claudine played the Flower and participated in the film's soundtrack by Alan J. Lerner and Frederick Lovey. The soundtrack album later won the Grammy for Best Recording for Children at the 1976 awards ceremony. The award went to the album as a whole rather than to Claudine individually, but it became one of the final projects involving her to receive recognition from the industry. By 1975, the pace of Claudine's career had clearly slowed. The years of releasing albums one after another were over. Her acting roles had become increasingly infrequent, and there was no major new project capable of reversing the direction of her career. What is notable is that there had been no announcement of retirement at the time, nor any official moment marking her departure from Hollywood. Claudine's career simply and quietly grew smaller, until the events in Aspen the following year brought almost every possibility of a return to the spotlight to a complete end. Claudine Longet and Andy Williams met in the early 1960s in Las Vegas, when Claudine had just moved from Paris to the United States to perform with the Folies Bergère troupe at the Tropicana Hotel. Andy had already established a name for himself in the American music industry, while Claudine was just beginning her life as a young dancer in Las Vegas. The two began dating, and just over a year later, on December 15, 1961, they married. From that point on, Claudine entered a family life that became increasingly intertwined with the entertainment world, as Andy's career continued to grow throughout the 1960s. Her marriage to Andy also had a significant influence on the early years in which Claudine was building her career in America. She appeared many times on The Andy Williams Show and joined her husband on several television programs, through which she became more familiar to American audiences. Andy continued to support Claudine as she expanded her work from dancing into acting and then singing, although the major turning points that followed, particularly her contract with A&M Records, came from professional opportunities of her own. As a result, during her early years in America, Claudine's married life and artistic career often developed side by side, even as she gradually built an independent name for herself. During their years together, Claudine and Andy welcomed 3 children: Noel, Christian, and Robert. This was also a period when both maintained busy working schedules. Andy was continuously recording, performing, and producing his television show, while Claudine began taking acting roles and then entered the recording studio after signing with A&M Records. Family life therefore existed alongside the years of strongest career growth for both of them. However, publicly available accounts of Claudine provide few details about how she balanced her work with raising 3 children, So much of their private family life remains outside what the public has been able to know. By the end of the 1960s, the marriage had begun to enter a different phase. In 1970, Andy and Claudine separated after nearly a decade together. The two did not turn the breakdown of their marriage into a public confrontation in the press, and continued to remain connected through their 3 children. They lived separately for several years before their marriage officially ended in divorce in 1975. After the divorce, the relationship between Andy and Claudine did not come to a complete end. They continued to share responsibility for their children, and what happened later showed that Andy still maintained a close relationship with his former wife. This became most evident during the major crisis that befell Claudine only a short time after the divorce, when Andy came to Aspen, supported her, and later appeared at the trial related to the death of Spider Sabich. Their relationship had therefore changed in form, but the bond created through many years together and their 3 children continued to exist. During the period when she was living separately from Andy, Claudine became involved with Spider Sabich, a professional skier who had competed for the United States and participated in the Winter Olympics. Sabich was closely associated with Aspen, Colorado, where he lived and remained active in the world of professional skiing. Claudine later moved with her 3 children to live with Sabich in Aspen. Her departure from Los Angeles also came at a time when her artistic activities were gradually declining, taking Claudine's life increasingly farther away from the pace she had once maintained during the years when she regularly appeared on television and worked in recording studios. Claudine and Sabich lived together in Aspen until 1976. Testimony and documents that emerged during the subsequent investigation and trial indicated that their relationship had experienced problems before the shooting occurred, although Claudine herself continued to describe them in court as close friends who loved each other. Her diary was seized by investigators, but was later not used at trial because of issues related to the procedures through which the evidence had been obtained. What truly took place between the two during their final months together was therefore never fully clarified through the trial record. On March 21, 1976, inside the Aspen home where the two were living, Sabich was struck in the abdomen by a bullet fired from a .22 caliber handgun. Claudine accompanied him in the ambulance, but Sabich died on the way to the hospital from blood loss. The incident immediately attracted media attention because Sabich was a well-known skier, while Claudine was already known to the public through music, film, and television. Within a short period of time, what had happened inside the Aspen house became the focus of an investigation closely followed by the press. From the beginning, Claudine maintained that Sabich's death had been an accident. According to the account she gave authorities, she had found the gun and asked Sabich how to use it, believing that the safety was engaged when the weapon discharged. At the later trial, a ballistics expert also testified that the gun's safety mechanism was not functioning properly. However, what happened in the moments leading up to the gunshot remained the central issue, as the prosecution and defense presented different explanations for Sabich's death. The subsequent investigation encountered serious procedural problems. Some evidence, including a sample of Claudine's blood and her personal diary, could not be used at trial in the manner the prosecution had intended because of issues related to how it had been obtained. This narrowed the evidence that could be presented to the jury when the case entered the courtroom. Those errors later also became an inseparable part of the debate surrounding the outcome of the case. The trial took place in Aspen in January 1977, with Claudine facing a charge of felony reckless manslaughter. After 4 days of trial and approximately 3.5 hours of deliberation, the jury did not convict her of the original felony charge, instead finding Claudine guilty of negligent homicide, a lesser misdemeanor. The verdict did not determine that she had intentionally killed Sabich, but instead placed criminal responsibility at the level of negligence resulting in his death. On January 31, 1977, Claudine was sentenced to 30 days in jail, 2 years of probation, and a $250 fine. Throughout the case, Andy Williams publicly stood by Claudine even though the two were already divorced. He was present in Aspen, helped cover her legal expenses, and appeared as a witness for the defense. Many years later, Andy still said that he believed Sabich's death had been an accident. His presence showed that the divorce had not completely severed the bond between the two after many years together and 3 children. Meanwhile, the sentence imposed on Claudine continued to be a subject of debate after the trial ended. Sabich's family subsequently filed a lawsuit against Claudine, seeking $1.3 million in damages. The two sides ultimately reached an out-of-court settlement for an undisclosed amount, which included a provision restricting Claudine from publicly speaking or writing about Sabich and the incident. This placed a clear limit on what she could recount about the event that had changed the rest of her life. The trial had ended, but the story of what happened in Aspen continued to be discussed by the press and the public for decades afterward. After the trial came to an end, Claudine Longet almost completely withdrew from the American entertainment industry. She released no further albums, took on no new acting roles, and made no attempt to return to public life through memoirs or exclusive interviews. Her withdrawal was nearly absolute, particularly as the case continued to be mentioned in the press for many years afterward. From someone who had once appeared regularly on American television, Claudine entered a life about which the public gradually knew very little. Part of that silence was directly connected to what happened after the criminal verdict. Spider Sabich's family filed a civil lawsuit against Claudine, seeking $1.3 million in damages before the two sides reached an out-of-court settlement for an undisclosed amount. Under the terms of the settlement, Claudine was prohibited from publicly speaking or writing about the story involving Spider Sabich. As a result, while theories and debates about the gunshot in Aspen continued to appear in books, newspapers, magazines, and on television, the only woman who had been inside the house with Sabich that day never provided a complete public account of her own. In 1985, Claudine married Ronald "Ron" Austin, one of the attorneys who had been part of her defense team. The two built their life primarily in Aspen and stayed away from the entertainment world to which Claudine had once belonged. They also spent time living at a second home in Hawaii, but very little information about their family life was made public. The years of constant appearances on stages, film sets, and television had truly been left behind. Claudine no longer sought to maintain her position as a public figure. Her last known public appearance came in a very different form in 2003, when Claudine participated in A&E's biography program about Andy Williams. She did not appear on camera, contributing only through her voice. In the program, Claudine recalled that many years after the era of the Andy Williams show, people would still recognize her on the street and talk about Andy's Christmas programs that they had once watched with their families. It was one of the very few occasions on which the public heard Claudine's voice directly after she had been away from the entertainment industry for decades. Claudine's family life also endured a major loss in 2019, when Christian Williams, the son she had with Andy Williams, died in Costa Rica at the age of 54. Claudine did not make any extensive public statements to the media about the loss. Like most of her life after the trial, what happened within the family was kept away from public attention. She continued to live with Ronald Austin and maintained the private life she had chosen decades earlier. On May 14, 2026, Claudine Longet died in Aspen, Colorado, at the age of 84. Her family confirmed her death but did not disclose the cause. The news quickly appeared in the Associated Press, the Los Angeles Times, the Hollywood Reporter, and numerous other American media outlets, bringing a name that had been absent from public life for decades back into the headlines. The obituaries looked back on the young woman who had left Paris for Las Vegas, her years on television and in the recording studio, the party, Andy Williams, Spider Sabich, and the trial that changed the rest of her life. That attention created one final paradox in Claudine Longet's life. For nearly half a century, she had done almost everything possible to live outside the public gaze, while stories about her continued to be told by others. By the time Claudine died, that distance remained unchanged. The press could look back on what had been documented, but much of the life she had lived behind closed doors in Aspen still belonged to her family and those closest to her. The silence that began after the 1977 trial ultimately lasted until the end of her life. Claudine Longet's legacy occupies a rather unusual place in American popular culture. She does not belong among the singers whose influence was great enough to change the direction of pop music. Nor did she leave behind a long film career filled with a series of classic roles. What remains most clearly is a highly recognizable style, a small, soft, almost whispering voice, pronunciation colored by a French accent, and the elegance associated with her image during the final years of the 1960s. At a time when American music was increasingly moving toward more powerful sounds, Claudine represented a different branch of that era, one in which a song could create its appeal through gentleness, moments of quiet, and a sense of intimacy rather than vocal power. The lasting appeal of that style can be seen most clearly in the way Claudine's recordings continued to survive after she had left the entertainment industry. Her albums were reissued across multiple generations, particularly in Japan, while recordings that had seemed to disappear during the Barnaby Records years were also rediscovered and brought to listeners many years later. What is remarkable is that Claudine herself played almost no part in maintaining that recognition. She did not return to the stage to capitalize on nostalgia, did not embark on reunion tours, and did not create a new public image for later generations of listeners. The music continued to be sought out, while the person who created it remained almost entirely outside public life. The party also helped preserve a very different Claudine Longet from the image that would later appear so frequently in stories about her life. As Michele Monet, she appeared gentle and understated amid the chaotic comic world created by Peter Sellers. The scene in which Claudine sings "Nothing to Lose" became one of her most recognizable moments on screen. As the party continued to be watched by successive generations, that image inadvertently became an intact glimpse of Claudine before 1976. A young artist remembered for her voice, her charm, and her presence before the camera, rather than for a trial. But Claudine Longet's legacy cannot be understood solely through what she left behind on records or on screen. After Spider Sabich's death, her name entered popular culture through an entirely different path. The Rolling Stones recorded Claudine, inspired by the case. Saturday Night Live turned the story into material for satire, and many years later, her name continued to appear in television dramas, books, documentaries, and programs revisiting famous American criminal cases. A woman whose public image had once been built around the elegance and restraint of late 1960s French pop ultimately became a name that audiences often encountered in stories about crime, the media, and celebrity trials. It is precisely this contrast that makes Claudine's legacy so difficult to separate into distinct parts. For those who rediscover her old recordings, she remains the fragile voice of Meditation, Hello, Hello, and love songs colored by bossa nova. For film audiences, she may still be Michele Monet from The Party. But for a much broader segment of the public, the name Claudine Longet almost immediately evokes Spider Sabich and the house in Aspen. What she built over many years did not disappear, but from 1976 onward, it always existed alongside a story far larger than her artistic career itself. Perhaps that is also the most distinctive aspect of Claudine Longet's place in the history of popular culture. She did not disappear from public memory, despite deliberately leaving the spotlight for nearly half a century. Her recordings continued to be heard, the party continued to be watched, and the Aspen case continued to be retold. But each of those paths leads to a different Claudine. One belongs to the gentle sounds and elegance of the late 1960s. Another remains forever in the shadow of the few seconds that unfolded on March 21, 1976. And ultimately, her legacy exists precisely in the difficult-to-erase distance between those two images. Claudine Longet's life began a new chapter when she left Paris for America at the age of 18. What followed carried her through very different worlds. the stages of Las Vegas, television studios, recording studios, Hollywood, and finally Aspen. There were years when her name appeared constantly on television and on the charts, but there was also a much longer period when Claudine almost completely disappeared from public life. If her early years were documented through albums, films, and appearances before millions of viewers, then most of the years that followed passed behind a door that she rarely opened again to the press. What is particularly striking is that Claudine did not spend the remaining years of her life trying to explain her past. She did not write a memoir, did not give major interviews to tell the story in her own way, and did not seek a path back to the stage as public attention gradually faded. While the press, books, documentaries, and popular culture continued to mention her name, Claudine lived in Aspen and remained almost entirely outside all of those retrospectives. As a result, when she died in 2026, a very large part of Claudine Longet's story was still known only through what others had written, told, and debated about her. After a life that had once unfolded before so many cameras, perhaps the final thing Claudine managed to keep for herself was her silence.